My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast, and we did tell you we'd be back. We're not even going to try to hide it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Kyla.
Woo!
Woo! How are we going on the other side of the world? Literally, actually on the other side of the world.
I know we are all over today, aren't we? This is so exciting. So how are you? Good evening, good afternoon, good day.
Yes. Wherever you happen to be listening, people. So
exactly.
we are actually covering the gamut. So we're doing quite well.
A witching hour to you for those in New Zealand. Oh, kia ora.
Kia ora.
New Zealand.
Anyway, so it is absolutely fantastic to get to talk to you finally on the podcast. We've been really looking forward to this moment, and especially after episode 1 of season 4. What was it like to finally get to see season 4 get underway, especially with all the COVID stuff?
It has been so hard to keep it all a secret. I mean, that to me, that was one of the most exciting episodes to be a part of, because I think just the whole energy. I mean, we were in such a difficult time filming, and yet the Bakers just had so much energy and so much talent, and it was so exciting. And just visually, it's such a great episode. Just the use of color, and Valentine's Day, which I love. So how perfect. So that was a tough one to keep a secret for a while.
Got all the colors in absolutely fantastically.
Yeah, and I did love that coinciding with Valentine's Day. I'm a bit disappointed that, you didn't celebrate Lupercalia. But I understand that ancient Roman festivals tend to be a bit more gory and maybe not bake-off safe.
I know, but no, they are bake-off safe. I mean, some of the Roman baked goods are fantastic, but there would probably end up being garum somewhere in there, and I'm not a fan.
Oh, okay. I'm a fan of that. And on a historical note, Jasmine did take us on a bit of a history lesson last year. So I think we could do ancient bakes.
Can I just say
Ancient Bake Week? I'm looking forward to it.
Ancient Bake Week would be fantastic.
You have to use powdered mummy.
Can I just say though, Kyla, at this point in time, Jasmine's mother is losing it right now. She listens to the podcast, and the fact that you just mentioned Jasmine again, her mother will be losing it right now. So how are you going, Jackie? Good to hear from you.
And take a few breaths.
Oh my God.
Take a breath. So
we all love Jackie. I've got to be honest.
Jackie's awesome.
She is.
Jackie's
she is a beautiful person.
She's genuinely awesome. So it was really good to actually get to see everyone back. Obviously, we sort of mentioned a little bit last week with Alan and Anne when we spoke to them about the importance of things like Bake Off, especially with what's going on globally at the moment, and just the chance to have some nice, good, fun television that was just really positive. And I think episode 1 was one of the most positive episodes of television I've seen in a very long time. So thank you.
It was, and even, I mean, there's a portion of the day that we're permitted in the tent. There's a big portion that we're not permitted, but we don't get to see everything. And so when I watched it back, and there was that moment when Rafikat went over and helped, that was like, I was a viewer, not a judge in that moment. I had no idea that had happened. And I was like, tearing up, and I was like, oh my God. I mean, it really is an interesting, magical show, even from both sides.
Yes.
It's really something.
So leading up to going into the pavilion, as we call it, what was your preparation like? Because, it would be very different to the past season in terms of, did you have to quarantine? Did you have to, wear a hazmat suit when you walked out of the pavilion?
It was I will say it was tough. I feel like I've probably written 1,000 times, and 1,000 isn't enough times to say thank you to the people on the crew, all of them, every single one, from the craft service to the medical team to the COVID specialist to obviously the entire production crew, the camera people. I mean, I'm looking at you through glasses just to be able to see you on our Zoom, but to wear your own glasses and masks and then a face shield and then covering and then try and convey to somebody in silence that you really need them to stop talking right now. It's really a difficult feat, so hats off to the production production team for being able to pull it off, and the camera people for being able to see it and to use technology and adapt so quickly to new technology to help them be able to keep their cameras in focus while they're all covered up. You know, there's so many things you don't realize. For me personally, I don't think it was a really big deal, but I can say that I had 2 beautiful weeks of isolation when I arrived in Toronto, because I am living abroad right now. I'm living in London, England. So coming over, I can tell you that, you know, the production company chose a flight that was almost completely empty.
Nice.
You know, I think I have to plant a lot of trees now for the carbon impact, but I felt very, very safe. I felt like Air Canada made it very, very safe. We did have full coverage, gloves and everything for the flight, mask, the whole 9 yards. 2 weeks of quarantine, which were actually kind of lovely, to be honest with you.
Nice relaxing self-reflection where you have to relax.
Yes, I got caught up on, I actually watched the Great Canadian Baking Show on Netflix, so that was exciting. I hadn't seen myself that big, so that was a bit odd.
Well, I like that Kyla judge. She's really good.
She's got
you know, she's a bit tough, but you know, but you know, I got caught up on some great Canadian TV I was missing, and I just had a really nice spot and just some quiet time. So it was okay. You know, 2 weeks, I don't mind at all. To be able to do that show, it was so worth it. And then by the same token, when I came back here after filming, same routine, 2 weeks of quarantine. So
I just imagine by the end of it, you've got this kind of like Buddhist Zen, you know, thing going, and just
well.
blessing people with the enlightenment shining through your eyes.
Yeah, well, I feel like, you know, maybe it was good for me. I'm probably pretty wired up most of the time.
I like the idea, though, that they also drove them to and from in the pavilion. So they had like a giant box around them at all times, waving to the bakers as they come in every morning. Good morning, bakers.
Yeah. No, it was a tight ship. I mean, for me last year, I'll tell you one thing that I love, because I'm a bit new to this whole TV world. Last year, I got to learn so much about the back side of production and how sound works and lighting and all those things. This year was, if this was my first year, I would know nothing about television production, because everybody was very...
everything was, separated and different.
I'm drawing it on my hand. That doesn't help you.
No, it's great. It's great for an audio medium. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It was great. I'll act it out for you. Yeah, pantomime. No, you know what I mean. Everyone was really protected in their zones and that kind of thing. So. Yeah.
And it would have then also been good, because you come out of this sort of quarantine period, you go into the pavilion, as we call it, and you get to sort of go around, and then you get to see these absolutely incredible bakers. And the first week is always one we've said frequently, and we keep asking different productions around the world to send a fake baker home in week 1. Because that way, like, just have the extra baker, because British did that last season with a 13th baker, and have them be like a boom mic operator or something, and then deliberately send them home so they go back to so no one actually has to go home. And what I really appreciated in this first week was all of the bakers from moment 1 were incredible. Like, they were all brilliant.
The talent just continues. I'm trying to choose how I can say this to you.
That's
fine. Don't worry. We don't think
really
they get worse.
hard.
We don't think they get worse.
Make our job easy. Like it was. Yeah, it was nuts. It was, you know, and I mean, I think that we joked a bunch of times that people had a little more time to practice this year, a little more prep time, working from home and all of that jazz. I know I certainly have become a very experienced home baker. I've gotten over that part where I've complained that no one does my dishes at the end, and I don't have a big kitchen with all the tools and toys and bells and whistles that I need. But I've succumbed to that, and I do my own dishes and everything now.
That's the COVID. That's the COVID for you. That's the COVID.
It is, you know. But everyone really did get to try more things, and I think that you know, we all saw the internet explode with ideas and concepts, and it was really neat, because I think we could challenge the bakers, like we did in the first episode, to say, well, what if we take the whole thing and turn it on its side?
What if we do a vertical Swiss roll? And what if we do that? Yeah, that could be good.
It is really therapeutic, though. I highly recommend, if you do any baking at all, try one, because and the recipe's on CBC, but try it, because it's really like you feel so good. Like, I've been baking for 30 years and I felt so good when that stood up straight for me.
It looked like the definition of ugly delicious, because as it's being put together and they're rolling it and they're pushing it all together and you're like, that doesn't look very good. And then they stand it up and you're like, still not quite there. And then you look at it and go, but damn it, if it's not probably going to taste amazing.
And then they suddenly, the icing goes on, and then you've got the decorations.
Although I am going to raise a question about the decorations, though. Ruby chocolate.
Christopher.
Why?
Stop it, Christopher.
I'm not a fan of ruby chocolate.
Okay, let me ask you this. Why not?
I'm not quite sure. It doesn't. It's the flavor and the texture of it. And I like white chocolate, by the way. I'm not one of these anti-white chocolate people. I like white chocolate. I like all the other ruby chocolate. For some reason, every time I've had it, it's just not quite on.
What did it do to you in a past life?
Well, it was not quite on, and that's the point.
Too, like, were you lost in a forest, in a jungle?
I was wandering. There was a vision quest.
The only thing you could eat was ruby chocolate.
I saw a fox appear before me and handed me some ruby chocolate. That's how it always happens. I'm quite sure.
You had a basket. You were going to grandma's house. Something happened.
100%. And they said that this ruby chocolate wasn't quite right. No, I do admit, I do have a bias against ruby chocolate. But it looks pretty.
Two things. There was a moment, and when we heard that perfect snap.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I will say, there's things that in life that I don't love, but I can always appreciate something done well. So I would encourage you to try it again when it's been properly tempered, because temperature affects everything. And something that tastes acidic, the minute you burn it or undercook it, you're going to get new things like bitterness that you didn't want to have happening in your mouth simultaneously. Acid and bitter is not a good combination, right? No. So I love bitter. So so first of all, that shows you I'm a fan. Second of all, it was Valentine's Day. Of course we used ruby chocolate.
I mean, true. I mean, and I will say,
one day in the year, it's okay.
I drink very strong black coffee, so I am a fan of bitter too, which is the weird thing for me with ruby chocolate. But I do agree.
Right, but so it's the acidity that's throwing you probably from. I'm a bit obsessed with taste. We were talking before about being obsessed with history,
and I'm more than fine.
I'm obsessed with taste and flavor and your experience and how that all relates together. But not to get too technical, I think that go to your absolutely favorite, like go somewhere where you do a lot of work with ruby chocolate and taste their version.
Yeah.
Because it might be blended in a way you enjoy the flavor, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, what I like about it is I like when something happens in nature.
Yeah.
So whether or not you love the taste, whether or not you want to eat an entire cheesecake, that's flavored with it, like a white chocolate cheesecake might be delicious, or chocolate, but you might not love that. But everything in its right place. Mm-hmm. And I just love that it's a natural color that's so vibrant, and that we're still discovering new things.
Oh, the thing
that's my defense for ruby chocolate.
Tyler, I've accepted your challenge, and I will be taking him to a lot of chocolate.
Okay. You can do a tour.
Yes.
Science.
I will.
You want to do this? You want to do this for science, don't you?
Yeah.
It's completely for science. There's no. But look, and the one thing I will say is, I appreciated that snap on that tempered chocolate, and my expression on my face while I was watching it was your expression when you did the snap. And oh, that was really good.
Yeah. It's those aha moments, right? It's like, because we all have and something Bruno and I joke about is that the reason we know, people say, how do you know what went wrong? Oh, because we've made that mistake before, in however many short years, I think we figured out we've got more than 100 years of baking between us. And by more than 100, I mean probably a lot more than 100 now. But we really, when you have those great moments where something is truly perfect, you're like, oh, awesome. You can't help but get excited.
Yeah. So with ruby chocolate and the tempering temperature, like, is that around the same as milk chocolate, or is it like white chocolate, or is it
Well, and I think that's the biggest trick, is that I think it's also a nice challenge for somebody who's already experienced at tempering to start to say, okay, well, it's chemistry. Let me start all over again and apply everything I know. You treat it, basically the easiest way to explain is like white chocolate. Don't treat it like dark chocolate. It is, I don't know the chemical breakdown of the chocolate liquor, to the fat, but you do treat it like a white chocolate. It has definitely a lower heating point. It's going to break. It's going to lose its flavor, everything. If you go too hot, you'll ruin it really quickly. The same way that you can see it in white chocolate, where it goes grainy first and then black or brown.
Yeah, it turns.
Treat it like white chocolate.
There we go, folks. You treat your rubies like your white chocolate.
Treat your rubies like white chocolate. Wait. Now you did sort of mention there as well, you and Bruno talking about your combined experience, and it's one of the things that I think everyone's really enjoyed with having you both in there is just the combination of the two of you, and the speed at which you sort of bounce off each other is just. It's an absolute joy to behold. And it was really good to get to, you walk back in, you started again, and we're just like, well, this is good.
Yes.
This is really good. What is it like to get to walk into the pavilion / tent and just bounce off Bruno? Because, we when we spoke to him on the podcast, it was just that little bit was amazing. So I can't imagine like every day.
It's fun. It's nice to have a peer with whom you can share ideas and also with whom you can agree and disagree. You can't always, like, sometimes you talk to somebody and you kind of know you're right, but you don't want to offend them or whatever. In this case, it's like, oh yeah, no, he comes at baking from a very different perspective than I do. Mm-hmm. His experience is we grew up in different countries. We worked in different countries and worked in different types of kitchens, and I love that, because I'll say, oh, actually, when I make bread, this happens, and he'll say, well, actually, when I do it, this happens. Well, if I've learned one thing in England, is that flour and the protein content of flour globally changes everything.
Yep.
Wow. And Canadian flour is the best. Because I'm so familiar with how it reacts, right? Like, and I'm so biased, and I really do go out to stores and buy ones that say very strong Canadian wheat flour on it to make my recipes work. But that's what it's all about, is understanding that you come from different backgrounds and being able to sort of nosh it out. And I love that. Yeah.
And it sounds like the conversations would be that beautiful philosophical kind of, not even philosophical, but just the conversations that are both learning and understanding. And what we appreciate as viewers is that if you disagree, you both have valid reasons why you disagree, and they might be subjective in terms of, like, you prefer this taste, or Bruno prefers this flavor profile, but it's never that whole artificial, I'm just going to be contradictory for contradictory's sake. Like, it's just so refreshing.
Well, I'm glad that comes through. I'm glad that's how you interpret it, because I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say. You're there to help me put words there for me. Thank you. Because that's it. Like, it's like, if we don't agree, it's because we are approaching it emotionally from a different place. Chemically, we've had different experiences, like in terms of how we've worked with these ingredients in the past, what environment we've used them in. And there's never one true answer. I think that's the beauty and the bane of baking, right? There's never one right answer.
Absolutely. And food is so personal. Like, it's so universal, but it's so personal. If you ask an Italian nonna, what's the best way to make a tomato sauce, and you ask every Italian nonna, you're going to get a million different answers. So that whole beautiful tapestry of differences, but the universality of love of food is really. I'm just lyrical now.
You are.
I'm just.
I feel like the whole Buddha Zen is working now, that we're all just at peace with it, and I am obsessed with food. I feel like it's really all I've ever done. I was fortunate enough to grow up in the country and eat We joke now that every time I buy an heirloom tomato, I cringe at the price, because when we were kids, we just thought they were ugly and awful, and why can't we eat it now? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, and rhubarb, like it's by the way, rhubarb season is February in England, and it's kind of one of my favorite things. I made a rhubarb pie the other day.
I saw that, so I was going to bring that up, because your Instagram, if you are someone who enjoys a good food Instagram account, Kyla's is amazing. And the pattern on that, I did a double take. And I won't lie, I did a double take when I saw it. I was trying to work out if it was a scored ham or and I'm looking at it going, is that a scored ham or is that a rhubarb? And I'm like, it's rhubarb. Okay.
And since it's my Instagram, it actually could have been either.
That was my thing. I'm looking at it going, oh, she's scoring ham. And then I'm like, no.
Maybe I'll try one and put them side by side. I should do these. Guess what it is, which is the baking.
It'd be fantastic.
Illusion.
I actually have hamburger cupcakes. There was a popular trend a while, I don't know how many years back, where making hamburger cupcakes. So I'll put them up and I'll ask you, which one?
Which is the ham, which is rhubarb. But no, your food Instagram, which is just your Instagram, but your food Instagram game is absolutely amazing, and especially all the UK stuff, and not only showing what you're cooking, but obviously then showing some of the providers that you go to and some of the people that you're meeting that are making the goods and those sorts of things, and it just seems that you are having the absolute food time of your life in terms of going and finding all this stuff.
Well, I mean, there's several things going on. One of them is obviously a global pandemic. All the restaurants are closed. So I came here 2 years ago with a list. I'm showing you. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at podcast if I'm showing you with my hands here how big my list is. But they've been a large list of restaurants. I'm sure that you can just guess off the top of your head half of them. And I have a global list. Unfortunately, from London, traveling everywhere is really easy normally.
Yep.
Yeah. So I got here with all these intentions, and then they closed the restaurants to keep everyone safe. And so it's been a fun experience to seek out food shops that are still open. And because I had a cafe for 10 years, I can't imagine. I don't know how I would have survived this. I mean, I'm sure, we all figure it out, but I just think it's really important to name the people that are still there. And one of the things I noticed the most is that there's a lot of energy people are putting into their food displays.
Yep.
And there's a lot of great restaurants that are saying, hey, we are a French restaurant and we've always served the best, used the best garlic. We've had the best ingredients. So now let's just sell our ingredients. Yep. So I'm really taking advantage of that. And fortunately, being a chef, we pretty much just eat 3 solid crazy meals a day here. So
it's one of the things that I think has been fascinating about the pandemic is watching everybody, especially in food, because that's where we're sort of focused on, watching everybody adapt and watching everyone come up with new ways and new means to sort of continue business or come up with different avenues for business. Here, for example, and we've been very fortunate, obviously, here in Australia with regards to how we're going.
Job.
But we've had, when it was early on and we locked down really hard to prevent, obviously, further spread, one of the things that sort of came out of that was a lot of people started finding, and we found a bunch of farms and all these sort of suppliers who started delivering to everyone directly rather than going through third parties. And so it actually meant that there was a lot more creativity going on inside kitchens. And I mean, it covered the fact as well, as we mentioned before about, the bakers at home had more time than ever to prep. But also there was a bit of a flour shortage because everybody who's never baked in their life decided they were bakers and bought flour. And there was a big thing in Australia where all these people bought flour and then nobody could actually bake. So it just sort of sat there.
There was also a yeast shortage.
Yeah.
Robert Harwood from Greatest Australian Bake Off, he works for a cake supply company, and he's like, I've got yeast. Who needs the yeast?
He was
like a new world of dealers. It's, I mean, there's lots of jokes in Canada because of legislation that's changed in the past couple of years now, I guess, that, it was okay to be stoned. I don't know if I can say that here.
Yeah, you
it's
can
okay to be stoned. You just can't do it with anyone else. The world just changed. But now it was like, yeah, I got a guy. I know I got some yeast for you. And I was just gonna say, I am shameless. Like when I first arrived here, I have 30 years of I learned very localized food industry experience. But in 30 years, you make a few friends, right? Hopefully in the industry. Well, I got to London and I realized I don't know a soul. And I didn't even have I have a couple cousins here, but they aren't in the food industry.
Your contacts are in another continent.
It was crazy, but I'm a bit shameless. So I walked into the the fishmonger across the street here, which thank God. I mean, if you're ever going to move to a neighborhood that you don't know a city very well, just if there's a good fish shop, you're in a good place.
Okay.
But I marched in and I said, hi, I'm Kyla. I'm new here. I'm from Canada. And I buy wholesale.
I'm your new best friend.
But it was great because from this, if you know fishmongers, they usually know a lot of people, right? Because they're one of the earliest ones at every hotel and restaurant in the city. And then fortunately I started working at the Savoy Hotel, which helps to get to know a few suppliers.
I was going to say that would definitely help you. See, I know for a fact through other former Great Canadian Baking Show bakers that, one of the biggest problems they had in Canada was that the flour, a particular brand, which I won't necessarily know.
No, we can because they're a sponsor.
I think they are. Anyway, we'll come to that in a minute. Wasn't printing their bags in the same colours. And so it was white, not yellow.
But it was very interesting because, I have been using Robin Hood flour my whole life. That is not a pitch for the show. I have a cookbook to prove it. It is a staple because the quality is there.
Yeah.
And then when I opened my bakery, we do, you do type trial. Every supplier gives you, different samples to try all the time, and we really did always use the Robin Hood unbleached flour, which came in said white bag.
Yes.
So to all of a sudden see it on the shelves was like, oh no, that's the good one.
But that was all got really funny because
for 16 years. So yeah, but good on them because I think that's something people didn't understand. It wasn't that there was a shortage of wheat. It's that they were used to producing in 20 kilo bags, and then to all of a sudden to take all those 20 kilo bags and print enough, I don't know how
1 kilo.
Yeah, 1 kilo bags, yeah.
500 gram, 1 kilo. What do they sell them in the grocery stores?
Well, that was one of the things. Yeah, the Australian suppliers for all the different flour had to come out and go, yeah, no, we've got it. It's just the bags. We're used to
the bags,
bakers, the massive ones.
Yeah. But I think that's a really good sort of way to explain the whole pandemic. And I tend to look at things with rosy colored glasses. I know that this is so hard for so many people, and my heart goes out to all of them. And if there's one thing we can take away from this is that sometimes simple is fine too. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a great example of it. People cared more about the actual, they needed the flour more than they needed the shiny label in that moment, and I think that's a reminder that that's okay. That's good. Just go with what you have.
I think that's actually something that all of the versions of Bake Off have actually been really good at showing as well, in terms of just with the way the challenges go, which is that a lot of other shows, people can get away with the flash, but not necessarily the substance behind the flash. You'll see amazing plumes of liquid nitrogen going everywhere, but the actual thing that might be being made is not necessarily brilliant. It looks fancy, but there's nothing behind it. With Bake Off, you don't get to hide behind the fancy. It's, are you good at the base technique?
I don't know.
And
Sheldon is pretty fancy.
Yeah, but Sheldon's fancy, but with a foundation.
Yes.
That's the benefit. If you've got fancy and a foundation on Bake Off, you're made.
I'm glad that you mentioned Sheldon because he and I have had some conversations about this, and we both heartily agree that how can I say this? That there's one avenue, because I always say it's the tortoise and the hare, right? That really, it's slow and steady is a really important thing. We both heartily agreed that in drag, that's not the case.
No, it's very much not the case.
I might be terrible at drag because I'd be like, but I'm a really nice person on the inside. I'm sorry, my makeup's just plain.
Well, you're a glasses wearer, and I can't wear contacts as another glasses wearer. Like I've tried. So for me, eye makeup is a thing of the past. If I was a drag queen, I would have had to have retired 10 years ago because
I'm actually a no makeup person for the most part, and glasses are new for me. I take them on and off because I'm not admitting my age, but I can't see a thing without them, so it's really frustrating. But well, I mean, I should say I can see. I need them for the computer, is what I mean. I can see the baked cakes, it's fine. I love them. The big cakes are good.
Yeah, like, I want you to make a 19-tier cake so I can find it.
Yeah, but to go back to your whole idea about what's on the inside and what's on the outside, a few years back, I would say maybe mid-90s, cakes started to become all about Rice Krispie squares.
Yes,
and how
thank you,
Rice Krispie squares.
Yes.
And it was really disheartening because people, I used to joke that, gosh, I need to hire people who are good at modeling clay, not people who are good at baking.
I'll name it. Cake Boss nearly killed the industry. Anyway, I said it. Anyway, move on.
I wasn't going to say the name. But,
I will. I will.
But you know what? It was fun and exciting. Yeah. We all learned how to make guitars out of cakes, and I loved it. But it was a learning process because now it wasn't about the flavor. But when I had my bakery, sometimes I would worry about like, oh my gosh, is this not ornate enough or crazy enough? Like our cakes always fit through doorways, which seemed to be a common problem on those shows. Bigger than the doorways. I don't know. But it was about the flavor. And for us, it was always about the flavors and sensible fillings, because we would do 5-layer cakes with thin layers of totally biased here, but lemon curd, my favorite thing on earth, or raspberry, because I was like that hit of tartness in between a sweet layer, and then ice it with icing on the outside. And if I had a pinch of advice for anyone it's try that, because a lot of times when you get into mousse fillings and really soft jelly fillings as opposed to a jam filling, that's where you have slide.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that little trick where you do icing sugar, a combination of icing sugar and do you say corn flour or cornstarch in Australia?
Corn flour. Yeah.
Corn flour. Okay. I learned that word here too. We say cornstarch, but corn flour or cornstarch.
The same thing.
If you mix equal parts corn flour and icing sugar and just dust a little tiny layer, it makes glue to stick them together.
Sheldon could have been a tip. You could have used jelly. I was watching him trying to stack cake on. I was watching him trying to stack cake directly on jelly, and I'm like, that's not going to work. And he put it back on its slit again. I'm like, that's definitely not going to work, man. Just no. But with Bake Offs, we're mentioning about the what's inside. It's been really interesting too, because it's also sort of bucked the trend a little bit. A couple of the other food shows that we've had here, which I'm not going to name, got very into bringing on Insta bakers to as part of their thing. But what we were finding with a lot of the Insta bakers, and one show in particular we were watching, and we were talking to a bunch of Australian Bake Off contestants at the time, and we were all watching this cake challenge, and it looked like it was an amazing challenge. And what it ended up being was a vanilla cake with coloured fondant. And we were watching it, and the Australian Bake Off contestants...
I think they had some ridiculous long time to do it.
Yeah, they had like an hour and a half or something like that to do this cake. And the Australian Bake Off contestants we were talking to were dying of laughter and going, it's a vanilla cake with some fondant over the top of it. That's literally all they're making. And they didn't even have to make the fondant. They gave them the fondant. And it looked magnificent. It looked magnificent. But it was like the Insta baker. And that's one of the... Yeah. That's one of the things I think everyone appreciates with Bake Off is that
real skill.
Yeah, you've got to have the talent.
And like, Instagram is wonderful in terms of like, it's so pleasant to flip through and see all these beautiful inspirations. And the thing I love about Bake Off and baking show bakers is that they're not just like, they'll use that for the idea of the look of the cake, but their love of the flavor is also it makes when you hear them talking about it, your mouth starts to water. That's all I'm saying is that.
Again, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I'm absolutely unapologetic in saying that I'm so happy I get to actually eat the cakes, because it's really, I mean, it's really, you know, you see these people working so hard on this concept, and when you taste it, and for example, when Anjali, and I think I said something, I liked how the editing came out, that I was talking about the ginger cake was fine. It was a good ginger cake, solid recipe. You added that black pepper in the icing, and now you have a hit. Now you have something remarkable. Now I'm thinking about food and the experience, and I'm creating a memory. And that's what it is, right? Like, I think that, you know, when you start to study flavor, you know, we taste obviously on our tongue, but we remember it as a story in our head. And that's where these memories are created. And I think that's the difference, is that you can look at a picture and visually be impressed, you know, and go, oh my God, that's icing. I can't believe that's edible. Some of them, you know, how edible is it? Like, you've been manipulating these flowers for 16 hours and then dusting them with powder. Like, okay, it's still edible, theoretically. But then, you know, when you bite something, now you remember the whole story. And I think that's the magic. No,
if you can have the combination between the looks and then the flavor inside it. And I mean, I will always go back to, and for people who want to go back and look at our Washing Up Instagram, our wedding cake, which had both parts of it. I bring it up every time because it's amazing.
It really
was, so our wedding cake was the Great Australian Bake Off shed made, and it was an orange poppy seed and Cointreau cake. And it was made by a runner-up from the season of the Great Australian Bake Off, who was at our wedding, who made the cake for us. And it is, the look,
kind of lucky. Good for you.
Yeah, the look was absolutely incredible.
But the taste,
but the flavor is what
my mum still raves about it. She's like, "Have you got any left in the freezer?" I'm like, "No, Mum. It's 4 years ago."
But you know what? That is the highest compliment.
Absolutely.
You know, when you know, and who made the cake? Can you say?
So,
oh yeah, it was Moorish cakes. It was
Monica. Yes, so Monica was the runner.
Well, hats off to Monica, because that's just it. You know, your wedding is such. I mean, we were just talking about weddings the other day, my partner and I, and we were just talking about how there's so much energy. I'll use that word, energy. It's a nice neutral word. Weddings are very difficult, you know, to prepare and plan and organize. And if you still have that memory, and people are still asking about that flavor.
Or holding you to ransom.
So much positive energy.
Or holding you to ransom and attacking you because they want some cake.
Yes.
So, you know.
There's both sides.
Asking me this.
Now, in terms of, obviously, in terms of, you've talked about your experience. Now, if you'd gone back, say, 5 years and told yourself, by the way, you'll find yourself on the Great Canadian Baking Show as a judge, would you have believed yourself necessarily? Was that the path you thought you were ending up on?
I'll say yes.
Good.
I mean, if I can be, I'm not very, I can't, I'm not.
I've actually
yes, I mean, yes, I love this show. The minute I walked in the tent, it was home. I didn't audition in the first round, but when the baking show from England, I don't know how it was in Australia, but in Canada, it kind of got some buzz, and people were like, oh, could you imagine if there was this show over here? And I was like, yes, I'm going to be on it. And then I realized, obviously, you can't be a professional on it.
Yeah, that's a slight issue.
I quite understand it. Just tiny bit.
Canella, but Kyla, and I am just a regular home baker.
I'm a home baker.
Yeah. Well, somebody said, "Are you going to go on the one in Britain?" I was like, okay.
Good day, everyone. I would love to.
Yes, I've just learned to bake from watching your show.
I have a local fishmonger. I'm so appreciative. I'm so grateful. The timing was crazy. I had just made a decision to sublet my professional kitchen that I ran out. It was a huge decision. I mean, 16 years in one job is it's a vocation at that point, right? It sort of goes past, and building a company and then deciding, okay, I'm going to move to England and see where that takes me. And then all of a sudden they said, hey, the answer was Canada.
Come down and do the show.
Move to England, see where that takes me. Canada.
Back to Canada. So now I'm in England and I'm teaching online at George Brown College, which is a riot. We do it live from London, and like you, I teach at 11 p.m. because it's 6 at night there, and it's an honor to be able to continue to do that because it's something I loved doing. Just a little part-time, but I love doing that in Toronto. So now I'm in merry old England teaching in Toronto and going home to do the show. So I guess I haven't locked myself in here yet, but as any good Canadian, I feel like I can go back and forth well. So
yes. Now, something I know is that you're a fellow fan of Angela and Dick and their beautiful chateau over there in France. And I'm just wondering, did you manage to get there before COVID, or is this a plan? Or is it
yes, no, and then the worst thing is, God bless these people if I ever get to meet them, because they're going to be like, who are you? And I feel like I know everything about them. We're talking about Escape to the Chateau, which is my favorite show on TV, and fortunately, cable here is different. I've watched all of Law and Order over again because on TV, and Escape to the Chateau is on several times a day. So I've seen it, and there's a DIY version, which is even, I think, more. I
like the DIY version. I think almost more, where it goes from those two to it then goes into them helping everybody else, and it's great because you get to sit there and go, "Oh, that couple's really good. I hope they succeed." Or what do they do that they're not listening to anyone else? They're going to fail. Their business is going.
It's true, and it's funny because I love the expression armchair quarterback, because I feel like that's me. I'm like on two shows. One is British Bake Off. I laugh because I'm shouting at the TV, and then my partner is like, they can't hear you. You're not on that show. and then on Escape to the Chateau, that's exactly it. I'm sharing with these people. But one thing I do love that they do as a couple is they give people really great, solid advice. And they're nurturing about it, but they don't mince words. And I think that's cool. They don't lie to people and be like, oh yeah, you're going to be a huge success. They're honest,
Right.
They're honest about how hard it is. So
they're generous with their criticism.
They're like, if it's 3 a.m. and it's midwinter and your pipes are freezing up, like that's what you're going to be attending to, not your.
That's the reality. Yeah.
If your daughter is doing a very good job in running the chateau, and every time you go over things start going wrong, leave her to run the chateau.
Oh my gosh. The whole thing about the beer keg, it was just I know exactly who you're talking about.
For the 4 other people listening to this podcast who watch Escape to the Chateau right now, you are all going, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you know it. It's just, yes. But it's also, again, it's that lovely television too, right? It's fun to imagine and to daydream. And I've actually, I mean, Paris is a 2-hour train ride from here. I haven't been, I went last February. So right before lockdown, I went over for a couple of days because I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Imagine if I didn't get to again. But I went over because I was like, well, the train is right there. Like for me, that's closer than Ottawa from Toronto. So I can't not go. So I went for a couple of days and planning to go every weekend to do all my shopping and whatever. Anyway, that changed. So now I'm just waiting and planning my chateau tour. So no, I've never been to any of the chateaus, but I think what a great adventure when all of this is over.
See, I think go around and tour them, because you could just rock up with all the basic ingredients to make some awesome cake and just go, hey, Dick, let's just go hang in the kitchen, I'll bake you
See, he loves to cook.
Yeah, exactly.
You cook, I'll bake, we'll make this work.
Exactly. Angel can go and clean some, old dresses down and gold leaf them, which is what she loves to do. And
exactly. Oh, yes. Oh, she is the most put together person on earth, though, Angel, eh? I'm blown away.
The full hair and makeup.
Oh.
Just to some
I found this
overalls.
copper bath. I found this copper bath. I'm just going to go and strip it back.
Yeah. It's phenomenal. She's just I think they did a great show. I admire them for keeping it up. I hope they keep filming it. I don't know if they're listening, but please make 1,000 more episodes.
I really hope they are listening, to be honest with you, because I would like to do a Dick Strawbridge food tour, because his food tours are next level.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
To it, because with all the things that she's doing, Like she'd have to listen to podcasts to, you know, keep up with the world.
And surely she's through all the other ones by now.
Well, we'll do the next one from their orangerie. How about that?
I'm there. I'm totally
Okay.
live show from their chateau. Done. We're sorted. But it's you, as you sort of raised a really good point. Again, it's that nice television that we're getting to see a lot of, and fun television. And there was just this. I felt it online with the online presence, that there was this like communal smile that went up online, and it just felt like everyone on Twitter, and obviously we watched it slightly delayed from everybody else, because when it was on over there, it was about midday here and I was at work. But I was getting all these messages on Twitter popping up from people talking about just how fun it was to be back. And then just all this like squealing and squeeing from people watching it as it was happening.
Yeah.
And then messaging us going, have you watched it yet? We're like, not yet. Tonight we'll get home, watch it. But it was the hug, basically, I think everyone needed.
Yeah.
Well, it was, you know, and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that the first episode was Cake Week. I'm so happy that we got to do the challenges that happened, because I don't know how much you've been watching, but I feel like since mid-August, when I arrived back in Toronto, I feel like every single day someone has put a bundt cake picture online, and I'm like, you know, I can't comment, because I feel like if I even say their cake looks nice, I'm giving something away. So, you know, it was such, I think it was like you said, it was so eloquently put, that well-needed hug. And the thing is, it was also a little bit of pressure, because think about it, people in Canada have binge watched 3 seasons in a row, and then said, okay, what have you got for us now? What's the new challenge? You know, give us something different. And I think we did.
And that's one of the things we've found with the podcast, because we will have people randomly messages going, just started listening because I just started watching it, and I've just started going back and listening to all the previous episodes of Canadian. And I'm like, it happens like every week or 2 weeks. There's another message from someone going, I've just started watching Canadian, and we've just started listening to what you guys were doing. And it's more consistent than almost any other show that I think we've done and we've watched, because I think when we first found the show, it was actually before season 2. It was like 2 weeks before season 2, and we got through season 1 fast enough to watch season 2. And that was, again, it was perfect happenstance.
We were just like kind of like in between shows.
We were out of Australian Bake Off. We just finished it.
I'm like, my friend Valerie, who's an expat Canadian as well, living in Australia, goes, have you seen Canadian? I'm like, no, let's see if we can find it. So we found it. Anyway, we found it and watched it. We loved it.
It's okay, I live in another country too.
Yeah. It's okay.
I have to find it.
It's okay. As I can reconfirm again, we watch it perfectly legally.
Yes, we do.
We do actually watch it perfectly legally and give everyone ratings. So, hi guys.
Yes. And, you know, and we started to get, like, we've just had season 1 play of Canadian baking show
on TV
here. So, you know, that's a good start.
And it was
more.
And it was fantastic, because all these Australian listeners who'd listened to sort of our podcast of the first season went, oh my God, it's finally on. So they can watch it again.
Yeah.
And can actually understand it. Well, I think that I've always said, I've traveled a little bit in Australia, not enough, but I think that they often make comparisons of our personalities, Australians and Canadians, in that we're very honest, sort of free, loving, open people with more land than people. You know, in Canada, maybe a little more land than people. But, you know, I think that we have similar, I guess, I don't know, value systems, that the show just works in both countries, you know, and I think that the Australian version of the show as a franchise stands out.
And that's one of the things.
It really does. I think that's one of the go-tos internationally. And it's amazing to see that they're able to take this show that was really an idea of a roving tent, you know, celebrating baking in different counties in England, and make it into an international success. And I love that. I think it kind of renews your faith in humanity. I don't know.
Oh, yes. Completely. And on that point, one of the things, and whenever we've talked about the Canadian series, we've said openly that we think the Canadian and the Australian we've said we actually think are better than the British. And we think partially...
Don't say that too
Don't
loud.
say that
She's in
too
the
loud. I know
UK.
you're over there and that would be
Her
sacrilege.
fishmonger might hear, and then she's out.
But what I mean...
more lobster.
What I mean by
langoustine
that...
for you.
What I mean by that is, as you said, it's that sort of very commonality of value and the way that the show's presented. And I think the Canadian version and the Australian version have traditionally presented themselves very similar. And a little bit different to the British. Not like the Kiwi, which is a completely different show, but the Canadian and the Australian ones are very much a sort of 1A, 1B of each other, and that they reflect beautifully.
I think it's because the bakers treat it with the respect and the gravitas it needs, but go in with a kind of a positive attitude of like, I want to do my best here. My competition is myself. This is a great opportunity. And then you've got hosts and judges who actually care and love what they're seeing and what's going on there. So it's this beautiful, perfect, nurturing environment. And we should just roll that out across schools across the world.
It's, don't even get me started about schools and baking, because I would like to rewrite the entire maths. I learned that here they say maths, plural.
And
not, do you say it with an S? Okay.
Yes,
in Canada, we just have one math. But for me personally, I know that when I was very young, I had an aha moment in my home understanding fractions that I just couldn't see on a blackboard to save my life. And I wish that all schools taught baking in grade 3. Not, and it doesn't have to be mirror cakes in 3 tiers with.
But it should be. It really should be.
Isomalt crowns. It could be, but basic, like separating peas in a bowl, or learning to weigh flour, is it's so much clearer on a small scale, and I hope that the baking show, because I know personally I have lots of friends who are watching it as a family. And in Canada right now, it's actually kind of a dream come true. Like, it's on Sunday nights at 8 p.m., which myself and obviously all my friends of the same age group, we grew up watching as a family Sunday nights at 7 and 8 p.m. Mutual of Omaha, which was
I've seen Mutual of Omaha.
Animals.
Yes.
Obviously, I didn't learn. I stuck to baking. And Disney, but it was family time.
Yep.
And it's just that quality bonding time together, and you have conversations about what you saw and everything I love about travel and discovering the world, I'm sure piqued my interest because my family talked together about the rest of the world, and I grew up in rural Ontario, so we didn't know a lot about gazelles and things like that, and I mean, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I hope that maybe this family time for people will help people understand something, and we'll have less people in 15 years from now saying, I'm not good at math.
Yeah.
Because maybe they'll understand it on a better level. And all these parents that are trying to teach their kids at home right now, maybe we'll be like, hey, why don't we just bake something together? And maybe it'll just click for you.
Flour.
I got all this flour we bought during the pandemic. But it's one of those
some
things.
Some of it has a yellow label, some of it's white.
I can't work it out.
60 kilos of flour and 5 barrels of yeast.
Is it cornstarch or corn flour? No, but it's...
cornstarch or corn flour. But there it is. There's language studies for you too, right?
But it's true, because one of the things, and again, I'm at a high school, and it's still one of those things where you see kids with maths today, and they look at, again, fractions and ratios and those sorts of things, and they can't write it on a page. And I can sort of see those sorts of things. I've always been able to see those sorts of things. But for food, especially whenever I cook, it's an instant thing because I can see it and I know what the measurements are. And there's like hospitality, for example, here as a subject is quite a popular subject in a lot of high schools. So,
but you're a history teacher, and every time I say, hey, you should be making garum if you're, teaching Rome, like, why aren't you fermenting fish in your classroom?
It's, I love that you brought that up, because I want to do a huge shout out to my grade 1 French teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Because in grade 1, we made crepes in the like teacher's room, because I went to a small school. We didn't have a fancy home ec room, you know, in the teacher's lounge, whatever you call it, we learned to make crepes. And she has no idea what that one little lesson, and she was like a student French teacher, but she had spent a summer as an au pair in France. And look what she did. Now I'm, you know, answering your question. Am I the judge of the Great Canadian Baking Show?
See, Chris, you're denying some child in a bikini moment.
First of all,
What?
I've made waffles with my class.
Yes, but it's not
Thank
Garrett.
you. First of all.
History related.
First of all. Second of all,
Yes.
I teach a subject called society and culture as well, which is one we deal
Well,
with
why
global
don't you
cultures.
study Bake Off?
And what we've done with that, if you remember correctly, is use food to introduce all the different cultures, including I gave my graduating class last year a choice of, we did India for one of our major studies. So we went off and had proper Indian for their last lesson. We did a big Indian banquet with them all, which was good because they had studied the country for a start, and they were able to go, oh yeah, we want this and this and this. And everyone just joined in, and it was a really good bringing people together using food moment. So I do. So,
Amazing.
Still not Garrett.
Amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. Like, that's so exciting. And I love talking to other teachers that are doing this too. I know I have a friend in the US who actually transformed her science lab into an after school program. Obviously now everything's a little different, but she transformed her lab into an after school program because she's like, we have burners, like we just need some pots, and they got to donate pots. And the kids, the students love it, you know, and so good for you. Like you probably have no idea the impact you're having on the next generation. And we're going to need it. I mean, look where we got ourselves.
It's definitely needed. Now, to bring it sort of back full circle, back towards the show briefly before we get closer to finishing up, just without leading into anything that's coming. So nothing that's coming at all.
No spoilers yet.
You can pick any bake to set as a technical. What would you pick in an ideal scenario? You can pick anything. No time limit.
My heart is racing so fast. I'm trying to understand the questions so I don't give anything away.
Right. So nothing that has been set, nothing that is in the show. Right. You
so
can,
a technical that isn't on the show.
You can pick anything, and I'm including any length of time, because I've often put forward that I would like to see
a 6-day challenge,
1 or 2 challenges where they go really weird and go long.
In survival. Just let them loose in the grounds.
So you can set anything you want.
And it has to be a baking challenge.
Yep. Well, to be fair, you can use the loose definition of baking that occasionally appears.
Oh dear. Oh, I can't even answer that. Like, there's either 1,000 answers or no answers.
That's fine. I'm just always interested. So.
Oh, that's a good question. I like that. I'd like to hear what everyone else's opinions are on it.
So we've had. It's interesting because we've had a couple of people when we've just sort of talked to them off the record, talk about they would like to see. Again, I think Robert put forward, I think it was one point, a 3 or 4 hour, like a longer term multi-step challenge with like lots of little bits and pieces.
Right.
Which was good. I mean, obviously, and
the cameraman's going to need a big pay rise.
Yeah, well, of course they are.
It's just, you know, they are the unsung heroes of this show. What they can capture between them and the sound engineers, like, it's just insane what they can capture and yet not get in the way of the shots.
Exactly,
which
is amazing.
I would be in every shot if I was a camera person. I'd be like, oh, that looks great, and block the whole thing.
And now they're masked up and, you know, like face stuff, like, and, you know,
it's nuts. I'm deflecting, aren't I? I'm getting away from it.
You're doing a very good job, and Kristie's doing a very good job.
I have something in mind. I just don't know if I can say it, because what if it's a challenge one day?
Well, I'm talking about, if it's not a challenge this year, you're fine.
Okay. Well, you heard it first. My favorite cake in the world is a sacretort.
Ooh.
What's that?
Ooh. There you go. There's your challenge to find out.
I will. Okay.
It's from the Sacher Hotel in Vienna. It's basically a dark chocolate cake. It has at least a dozen eggs in it. So high protein, very good for you. Dark chocolate and lots of protein. It's got almond and apricot. So marzipan that you would make yourself, and then an apricot jelly you would make yourself, and a perfect chocolate ganache that is absolutely like glass. And it is not something that you can do quickly. to make it right.
Good.
And then you also have to have the dexterity to properly write Sacher. Again, I'm demonstrating for you, but to properly write on the top of it. So yeah, that is my, and I hope I haven't ruined it and we can't do it ever now because I've said it out loud.
No, on the contrary, it's inspired by.
Yes.
If you haven't made a Sacher tort, that's something to put on your list. And then to go to the Sacher Hotel in Vienna, of course. Which
that could be the last part, is that you've got to make it and then you can't eat it until you're in the hotel.
Yeah.
So
you're breaking my heart because my birthday was in April, was supposed to be a visit to the Sacher Hotel this year finally. But I found out though that I was wrong. I'm only 49, not 50. So I think that the universe is just saving it for my 50th. Maybe.
The universe has decided to help you out and go, no, have one on me.
Yeah. But also, Kristie, if you notice, the hour has changed. So it is technically, speaking of birthdays, it is your birthday. So happy birthday to you.
So much.
Woo. Yes. Thank you for giving up your birthday time to chat. I appreciate it so much.
It is Kristiemas. So.
It's the most wonderful time of the year. And, it's just a time to reflect on how awesome I am. So I just invite everyone, all of our listeners.
She makes it a full month.
And look, I'm really humble.
Very humble.
Absolutely.
It's a month of celebration for Kristiemas, and we wouldn't have it any other way. So
Fabulous. I think that must be an Aquarian trait because it's my mom's birthday too, and yes, the month of birthday for her.
It becomes a month. Yeah.
Look, I have an excuse. It's also my niece's birthday, so we just have to not the same day, but 12 days apart. So we just have to find different ways to celebrate.
I just slot my birthday in around people and just run with that.
Okay.
It's Christmas Eve.
On Christmas Eve. So Christmas a month.
You slotted in around some really big people.
Yeah. Kristie gets a whole month. Yeah. I work mine in there.
Get it around the hours between. Yeah.
Hi, me in presents.
But now, are you someone? Because some people say, "Oh well, I'll just have a party in July and celebrate later," or do you say, "Wait a minute, it's my birthday first"?
That's the one.
And then tomorrow you get
That's definitely the one. I tried the mid-year birthday once, wasn't successful. Everyone's like, "No, but it's not your birthday yet." And I'm like, "Not my fault." So this has been an absolute joy and an absolute delight. Thank you so much for talking to us. It has been it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. And thank you both for everything you're doing for baking and celebrating baking and all the love. It's just, I'm so excited I finally got to talk to you in person, sort of.
It's as close as we can get for now.
As close as we can get. So yes, the door's always open. I'd love to have you here. We'll go tour France and Ireland and everywhere and all of England. And
I'll be teaching you all the good phrases, practice Dear to Wish, and then practice Conas Torte Divina Barse, which means kiss my ass, you dickhead.
I love it.
The queen of accenting strikes again, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't do any fake accent except my best Canadian. So thanks, eh?
That's been fantastic. Thank you very much, Kyla. Thank you very much, everyone. We will catch you all next time. Until next time, I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
We will chat to you all later.
Schlante.